welcome to
I know,
the.
we are live now.
We are live and ready to go.
Yes.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I'm well, thank you,
Good.
and welcome to everybody who's out there who's joined us today for this great session of Wellbeing at Work, brought to you by the M&C Saatchi Saturday School. Very excited and happy to be here this morning.
Same here. So we get started. Um, just to remind you all as well, those that are logged in, this is all classes that you're going to see today via the M&C Saatchi Saturday School are CPD accredited, and so there are forms available online for you to complete.
Saturday School. Very excited and happy to be here.
Okay. Yeah, and so Saturday School, so M&C Saturday School is sorry, gosh. M&C Saatchi Saturday School teaches the basics of business. Sorry. So it can be set up, so M&C Saatchi can be set up and run by any group of individuals passionate about community development. So it's open to all through the Saturday School and M&C Saatchi, and they want to ensure that underrepresented groups also gain access to training opportunities and rewards and entrepreneurial careers. So this is the Wellbeing at Work, and just a brief introduction about what we're going to be covering today. So mental health, it affects us all. Mental illness is experienced by 1 in 4 of us. So at some point in our life, we have all experienced times of stress and low mood. So in terms of absences in the workplace, they are mainly due to work-related stress. So by understanding our moods and thought patterns, we can all benefit from better mental health, for better physical health, and reduced absence of illness, and to be happy where we are and doing what we're doing. So the objectives for today for our Wellbeing at Work are as follows. So by the end of this session, what you will learn is the components of the term wellness, how to build emotional resilience, the various strategies to cope with stress, what self-care means to each of us, and the benefits and importance of physical activity, and the signs and symptoms of burnout and depression, and the definition of stress, along with the difference between imposter syndrome and reality. So in the first part, there's going to be 2 parts to this session. So the first part is the different causes of mental health problems. And this is where I'm going to pass over to Rachel.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrea. So yes, indeed. So I think we look at what is mental health, because there's so many different ways that this terminology is being used and these words are used, and sometimes they can mean different things to different people, which is fine, but we'll just outline what we're determining to be mental health and well-being today. So I think it's important to note, it's noteworthy that being mentally healthy doesn't just mean that you don't have a mental health issue or mental health diagnosis. There are people who have mental health diagnoses. For example, you could have been diagnosed with depression, but you are still in a mentally healthy place. So if you're in good mental health, we take that to mean that you are in a position to make the most of your potential. You can cope with life and the various kind of challenges that life will bring your way, and that you're able to play a full part with your family, in the workplace, in your local community, and socially amongst your friends as well. So that's taken from the Mental Health Foundation, and that's what we'll be going with today. So, but being mentally well is it's like on on a spectrum from one end to the other, and we will sit at any point on that line at any one time. Um, if we go on to the next slide, um, some people, as I say, where we use the terms differently, some people call kind of mental health emotional health or well-being. I tend to use them kind of like as a catch-all, so I'll talk about emotional health and well-being when I'm talking about being mentally well. And it's important to remember as well that it is just as critical as good physical health. So you have emotional health, mental health, you have physical health as well. We look after the outsides very much, and kind of like our physical well-being, and we need to do the same for our internal and emotional well-being as well. Again, the Mental Health Foundation says that mental health is everybody's business. You know, it's not some, we'll kind of touch on stigma as well, but you know, a lot of the times people can keep themselves to themselves and keep issues and problems and not share. However, especially if you're in the workplace, it's very, very important that you can find ways of communicating how you're feeling with those that you are working with and working for. We all have times when we feel down or stressed, frightened, and most of the times those feelings do pass. You know, that's something very natural throughout the cycle of life. Lots of different challenges and life scenarios and circumstances that we'll face. Sometimes, however, for some people, those feelings might not pass. They might continue. They might linger for longer than they would do for somebody else, and that's when perhaps things could start developing to a more serious issue. And it could happen to any one of us. As Andrea said, 1 in 4 of us would have experienced some type of a mental ill health at some point in life. And I think it's important to remind ourselves as well that it's more common than we think, and we're not the only ones who are feeling or who have felt like this. There's definitely ways that we can reach out for help, and that will be explained further as well. As I said earlier, yes, there is a stigma attached to mental health problems, and that is in, you know, various communities have, you know, various ways of concealing, keeping, and not necessarily sharing these particular issues. So this means, you know, if there is a stigma, it can mean that certain that, you know, that you feel uncomfortable sharing. It means you feel uncomfortable talking about particular issues, and people don't talk about it much. Many people don't feel comfortable talking about their feelings and their emotions, but it's definitely healthy to know, understand, and acknowledge how you're feeling, and having some sort of outlet that you're able to express and communicate that as well. And I'll hand back to Andrea.
Thank you, Rachel. So there are signs and symptoms of mental health and just well-being and so on and so forth. So we're going to go through some of those now. So there's a list of signs of burnout. So burnout is a very common thing that experienced by many at work. You know, especially if you're self-employed, you want to be doing all of the things, and you may not have enough money to employ someone to come in and do the accounts or someone to come in and do the marketing. You're more than likely doing this all yourself, especially in the first stages of business. And so what we're going to work going through now are some of the signs. And so there are physical, emotional, and behavioral signs that you will notice. So the physical signs and symptoms of burnout could be that you're feeling tired and drained most of the time. Lowered immunity, so frequent illnesses. So, you know, you're catching colds a lot more quicker than what you might normally do because your immune system is low. Frequent headaches or muscle pains, change in appetite or sleep habits. Emotional signs, sense of failure and self-doubt, feeling of helpless and trapped and defeated, detachment, feeling alone in the world, loss of motivation, increasingly cynical and negative outlook, like I can't do this and this won't work for me. decreased dissatisfaction and sense of accomplishment. Then we go into some behavioral signs and symptoms. These could be withdrawing from responsibility, isolating yourself from others, procrastinating, taking longer to get things done, using food, drink, or alcohol to cope, taking out your frustrations on others, and skipping work or coming in late and leaving early. Now, for some of these burnout signs and symptoms, I myself have experienced a majority of what we've just gone through in those lists. I wouldn't have necessarily been able to associate what I was actually going through with burnout. And that's because I didn't have an understanding. And so this is why I feel like workshops such as Wellbeing at Work is very valuable to give you that understanding. So even if you are experiencing some of these things, it might give you some way to start talking about how you're feeling to somebody else, or may even seeking medical advice. Because a lot of the times we might think, oh, it's because I'm working a lot. Yes, it may well be, but you want to be able to catch the burnout at an early stage rather than wait for it to get too drastic. What is stress? So a lot of us go through stress at many stages of our life, but it all depends on how long that stress lasts for. Is that stress lasting for periods of like long periods of time, days, weeks, months, or or is it just like you're stressed because you've got a piece of work to do? The dictionary definition of stress is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. So stress can show itself physically, psychologically, and or mentally, but either way, the effects on the individual can be catastrophic. And again, I have my own lived experience with experiencing stress over long periods of time, to where in fact that did turn into a mental health illness. And so, like I said, we all go through stress, but it does depend on the period of time and how long you're feeling stressed for. So it does say here, let's go around the room and discuss the last time that you experienced stress at work and describe what it felt like, and describe how it impacted you. But I feel like, Rachel, shall you and I describe what if we
Yeah.
felt like stress at work for us? Do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, before we do that, it's so key when you say kind of the physical manifestations of stress, because I know that I have, it's so random, and I probably only really realized it about maybe 4 years ago, that I get a really tiny spot of eczema on just my right foot. And I was like, why do I keep getting this? It's on no other part of my body. This just keeps flaring up. And it wasn't, but I said about 4 years ago, I realized actually it's my body's way of telling me that there's something wrong, and there's some kind of circumstance going on. You're stressed out. You're unhappy about something. And now that I can know that and understand that when that comes up on my foot, it allows me to just take time and just think and really, okay, what is it? What's going on? What do you need to deal with? So our bodies are amazing, and they will always let us know, even if we're not conscious of it. Your body will always let you know that something is not quite right. So yeah, I just wanted to definitely just attest to that. It's true.
And as you mentioned it, I'd add my bit as well. When I was actually going through my mental health illness, I was going to the doctors for different ailments, like different illnesses. Internally, things were happening to me, and then once I started to get better and things started to improve, it's like they just disappeared. So yes, physically, your body does show you signs. And this is why now I'm a big advocate about, if something feels wrong within your body, take notice and take time out, because it's very, very important. So yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing.
Oh,
So
yeah. So last time I felt stressed at work, oh my gosh, it wasn't actually that long ago. It was, I remember very well, beginning of April, I had a piece of work. So I'm self-employed. I was working for a client. I had a piece of work. I had a deadline, and it was just the wrong time for that deadline. And I was stressing. I was, oh, this is going to be crazy. What's going to happen? Because it was kind of linked to funding as well. And if I don't get this report in, what's going to happen to the client's not going to get their bit of funding. And you know what I actually had to do? All I had to do was speak out and say, look, this is where I'm at right now. This is the reason why I can't get this, or why I haven't done this. And actually, they were like, it's fine. We can extend it until June for you. Don't worry about it. And I was, you know, you wake up, everything's fine. And then you get that moment where you remember, oh, yeah. And everything just goes grey. And you're like, okay, what's going to happen? You're dodging phone calls. You don't want to look at your emails in case it's that email that comes through. And actually, you know, we can build up this perception of what's going to happen. This is the worst thing that could ever happen in our minds. And it's just a conversation that we're having with ourselves in our minds. We haven't spoken out, we haven't reached out, we haven't explained the situation. We're just telling ourselves all of these things that's going to happen, and we've made the situation, literally, it was a horror movie waiting to happen in my head. But actually, it wasn't that bad when I'd actually spoken out. So, yeah.
Well, for me, gosh, describe what it felt like. It felt like everything was just on top of me. And this, I'm talking about, when I'm talking about stress at work, I'm talking about when I was actually a teacher. So before post diagnosis, I am a qualified secondary school teacher. I was head of 2 departments, and I just felt like the work was just, for some unknown reason, it just kept on piling on, and it just felt a lot at that time. And the impact that it had on me was, when we mentioned in some of the signs of burnout, was I was drinking heavily, I was starting to binge eat a lot, isolating myself from others. So many things on that checklist I can now, like, looking back, I could tick off. And so it felt like, so going back to what we was talking about here, it felt like the world was just caving in. And then the impact was, it unfortunately led to my mental health illness. I know that's the extreme, but these are the things that can actually happen. So, and that's why it's important to always take care, take time, and listen to your body and understand. Being on workshop like these are giving you the understanding of what could possibly happen to you. So thank you for sharing, Rachel. So if you are feeling like you could be depressed, or there's maybe someone that you know that you may feel like could be depressed, there is a self-assessment that could be taken. It's hosted by the NHS. So it goes through some of the many symptoms of depression, including low mood, feeling of hopelessness, low self-esteem, lack of energy, and problems with sleep. The more symptoms someone has, the more likely they are to be depressed. It says test, but this self-assessment will help you to assess whether you could be suffering from depression. So you answer the questions based on how you've been feeling during the last 2 weeks. So if you remember what I mentioned about myself, and when I mentioned about stress and having it being over a period of time, the period of time is actually a 2 week period. So if you've been feeling like this same low mood for at least 2 weeks or more, I would advise you to take the self-assessment, but most importantly, seek medical advice. So now we're going to go into imposter syndrome. I'm going to pass it back over to Rachel.
Thank you very much. Yes, imposter syndrome. That, I guess it's been a bit of a buzzword recently. In fact, I say recently, it was actually, the term was started in like 1978, so it's not that recent. But recently we've been hearing it a lot. What does it mean? What does it mean for me? And I think it's really important to kind of just think about how do I know if I'm feeling I have imposter syndrome? So I would say, if you've ever had any of these thoughts, and I think a lot of us have, it could mean that at that moment in time, it doesn't mean that it stays with you forever, but at that moment in time, you were feeling like a bit of an imposter. So you can see the little graphic that's there. So imposter syndrome will have you believing that you only know a tiny bit about whatever the subject matter is. So I only know a tiny bit about well-being at work. However, everybody else, Andrea, everybody else who's listening in knows so much more than me. Why am I here? Why am I the one on camera talking? Everybody knows so much more than what I do. Really, I just shouldn't even be here. She probably should be Andrea, should just be leading this because she's got so much more experience than me. And, with imposter syndrome, I'm thinking someone's going to ask me a question or they're going to catch me out and I'm not going to know what the answer is. When the reality is probably more, as you said, the other graphic. So what you know is what you know. And that doesn't, you don't need to be comparing that to what somebody else knows. I shouldn't really be comparing my experiences and what I know with what Andrea knows. What other people know is all kind of adds, I can use that to add to what I know. So there's lots of, if you look at those circles, they're all kind of overlapping. So I probably know I'm great and I'm an expert at what I know in the center. However, there's some bits that other people know as well that probably overlaps with what I know. So I'm actually not as much in deficit as I think I am. So if you've ever said, and I know I have, I'm not going to go for that contract, or I'm not going to go for that promotion because I'm probably not going to get it anyway. So there's just no point. Or, when you do get that great contract, or you do get that, oh, you know what, I was just in the right place at the right time, and it just so happened that, I was lucky because, I don't know, it was a Tuesday and I wore my red socks, and that just so happened to let me get that piece of work. Or have you ever been at a kind of like a networking event or a conference, you're like, I don't know why I was invited here. Like I said, all these people are at the top of their game right now, and I'm just here. I feel like, maybe I wasn't meant to be invited. Maybe it was the wrong name on the invitation, or whatever it is. It's actually, we're playing ourselves. We're doing ourselves wrong. We're underplaying who we are, what we know, and how great we are at what we do. Yes, if you decide, Joe, I'm not going to go for that contract, I'm not going to go for that promotion, I'm not going to try and get that piece of work, guess what? And if you don't go for it, guess what? You're not going to get it. You're never going to get it if you've always told yourself that I'm not going to go for it because I'm not going to get it. Being in the right place at the right time, possibly. For me, I say that opportunity is where your chance and your preparation actually meet. So it's not because you were just lucky. Actually, you had to do some preparation to be able to even perhaps be in that position, or talk to that person, or express the knowledge that you did have about that subject at that time. And feeling like I shouldn't be here, what you're actually saying is that other people have more of a right to be in that position, to be in the position that you are. And we need to do some work to undo some of that learning. And it could be, as they do say, that great British that great British spirit of always underplaying and always kind of, oh, you pay, no, I'll pay, no, I'll pay. No, actually, sometimes we just need to say our greatness out loud, and when you say it out loud, it becomes real. Put it that way. So yes, imposter syndrome, very much known as, it's kind of like a pattern of psychological self-doubt, basically fear of being exposed as some type of fraud, and very much for the things that you've legitimately actually accomplished. Sometimes it could stop us recognizing our own achievements. It's an internalized fear that can kind of make you feel quite anxious sometimes if you keep replaying it over and over again. It can make you doubtful, you feel inadequate, and in a state of constant worry that someone's going to catch you out. So what can we do. What can we do to overcome imposter syndrome? So there's 10 ways here. I don't know, are you on the screen? Yeah, so 10 ways here. You can keep a journal of the achievements that you do have and that you do make. Set some goals, and really important, I always celebrate when I've set a goal, and I celebrate when I'm on my way to completing the goal, and then I celebrate when I've actually completed the goal. So celebrate those wins, because to me, that even to take the step to actually say, right, this is going to be my goal, to me that's a win. You've taken steps to do that. So definitely celebrate, or celebrate no matter how small. Celebrate your wins. Build a professional network, professional support network. Have some professional mentors, have people in your corner team who, as much as they might pull you up a bit if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, at the same time they will be your cheerleaders and support you all the way. And that goes on to getting that 360 feedback. So get that from everybody. Don't just go to that person who, I don't know, perhaps you've got that boss that is always trying to put you down, and taking that feedback to me, that's what everybody thinks and that's across the board. Actually go and ask everybody, your teammates, people that you work with, what's the feedback on this particular issue, or how you handled this situation. Update your CV. You can always be surprised at how much you've actually done. My CV has not been updated probably for about 2 years, and actually, if I think about the things that I've done just within the last maybe 9 months, my CV could look totally different right now. So take time out, and that's something that can be done over a period of time as well. Don't think that you have to do that in one day. Get a coach or a mentor, as we said. Getting a coach, you can kind of like reflect things back to you and help you to really explore and pull out the great kind of achievements and things that you've been doing is fantastic. Recognize that learning, and I hate the word failure because I don't actually think failure exists. It's just a learning opportunity, it's a learning moment. So recognize that when things become challenging, what am I learning through this? What can I take into my next challenge? What have I gained through this situation? It's actually okay. It's okay when things don't go to plan, because it means that actually there's another plan that you can always take. There are 26 letters in the alphabet, so not just plan A or plan B. Keep a file of positive feedback. I love that. I actually remember doing this when I was probably about 20. I went on a great team building weekend, and we all got this little notebook, and everybody else would write some kind of like anonymous feedback, and then we'd stick it all in our books, and that was really great. I actually still got it, and I still read it today. Do things outside of work or outside of your business that actually make you feel good. Just do things to enjoy yourself. It's really, really important. A lot of us, especially if you're working on your own business, we enjoy working on our own business. It's actually fun for us. However, you have to realize how interlinked that is with stress, or how interlinked that could be with creating more burnout. So as much as it's great that we enjoy our work and we enjoy what we do, find things outside of your work. Just going for a walk, it could be kind of listening to music, it could be anything. Things that you do just for fun, just because. No one's going to be marking it, no one's grading it, no one's going to give you feedback on it. You're just doing it because. And say it out loud to somebody, as I kind of said before. Oh, I feel like a fraud when I do this. Somebody in your corner team is going to look at you and say, don't be silly, don't be stupid. Look at all the things that you've done. Do you remember that time when you did this? Do you remember when you helped me with that? Do you remember when, I don't know, whoever it was called you to come and actually give this address at the conference? They did that because A, B, C, and D. You've got it. So absolutely 100%. Definitely gets people in your corner team. And when you do, and it's actually okay to feel that way sometimes. What's not okay is to stay in that moment and to stay with that feeling. So let's look at, use all these ways that you can actually step out of your imposter syndrome and realize that actually you're genuine, not an imposter at all.
Definitely. I think even the majority of these on here, I've actually done myself. So
Yeah,
I keep I keep a journal every day. I have actually got a coach, and obviously we're setting goals all the time. And I feel like the keeping a positive feedback file, I think that's really important because it's
yeah,
just reminds me of all the positive things. And when I update my CV, or not even updating my CV, but I always like write what have I done. That's just keeping a list of all the things that I've done. And then when I write them down and I read them out to myself, it's like, wow, this is why
yeah,
I am. This is why I'm not an imposter, because I am able to do these things. I have the credibility to do what I'm setting out to do. So I think that just writing the things that you are doing down on a regular basis really re- reinforces why you are that go-to person.
yeah, yeah. And I think also, you know, you kind of, if you're at work, you kind of get it with your appraisals, but you also get that kind of informal feedback from colleagues and line managers as well. Make a note of it. Even be bold enough to say, would you mind if you could just put that in an email for me? Just so that you can note it. The same when you're running your business. The amount of times, you know, we as business owners, we can kind of get caught up with the delivery of the service or the goods in the service. Actually, take the time to ask for, do you mind giving me some feedback? Can I get a testimonial from you? It's really, really important. And then we can look back on that and be like, oh yeah, actually, yeah, tick, I did that.
Definitely. Thank you. So next, we're going to be going through how to deal with conflict. Now, when you're at work, whether it be self-employed or whether you're employed, you may come across some conflict in some shape or form. So we're just going to go through now how would you deal with it, and what are some of the ways that you can deal with it. So these are just some of so you can talk to with other people or with the other person. Sorry, focus on behaviors and events and not personalities. Listen carefully. Identify points of agreement and disagreement. Prioritize the areas of conflict. Develop a plan to work on each conflict. Follow through on your plan and build your own success. So, for each of these 8 points, we're now going to go in a bit deeper into some of the things you can do for them. So, let's talk about talk with the other person. So, learn about some practical strategies you can use to handle conflict in the workplace. So, if you have a conflict with somebody else, one of the first things you should possibly do would be to talk with that other person. So ask the person to name a time when it's convenient to meet. So don't just go up to them and we need to talk. You both need to be talking at a convenient time, because it may be convenient for you but not for the other person, and so that might mean that they may be abrupt in their feedback to you, and then that may cause even more of a conflict. Arrange a meeting place where you won't be interrupted. So if there's a space where you can go quietly, where there isn't anybody else listening, nobody else, adding their 2 pence in, this is probably the best way to do it. So firstly, talk with the other person, and by doing so, arrange a convenient time to meet with them, and that meeting place should be somewhere where you won't be interrupted. Then we've got focus on behavior and events and not on personality. So what does that mean? So say when this happens instead of when you do. So you're basically being specific. So when this happens, so when you do X, when this happens, when this happens, this is how I feel. Instead of when you do something. So they may do something all the time, but it's this particular thing. When this happens, this is how it makes me feel. So describe a specific instance or event instead of generalizing. Very, very important is to listen carefully, because sometimes we can talk, but not actually listen. So it's very good to listen to what the other person is saying instead of getting ready to react. Avoid interrupting the other person. After the person finishes speaking, rephrase what was said to make sure you understand it. So, for example, okay, I heard you say, and then repeat what they heard you say. So if you do get it wrong, then you're corrected straight away, rather than listening and thinking you heard them say something and that wasn't actually what they said, so they can actually clarify what they actually said if you heard it wrong. And then that will allow you to then ask questions to clarify your understanding. So listening carefully is vitally important. Identify points of agreement and disagreement. So summarize the areas of agreement and disagreement, because you're not always going to agree all the time. So it may be that you're still disagreeing on some things, but let's just summarize what they are so we know where we both stand. Ask the other person if he or she agrees with the assessment, that what you've come up with. Like, okay, do you agree on this? Are we agreeing that this is X, and are we disagreeing that we're just not going to come to an agreement on Y? And then modify your assessment until both of you agree on the areas of conflict. So try and make it so that before you leave the situation that you've agreed on points, and you may disagree on some, but you both know what these agreements are and the disagreements are. Prioritize the area of conflict. So discuss which areas of conflict are most important to each of you to resolve, because there could be more than one area of conflict that you need to resolve, but some may be very, top of the list that is hindering you from going forward with any part of your work. And this is especially so if you're, working in maybe in partnership with somebody. If you're in conflict with your partner, you need to ensure that if you've got more than one conflict, but there is a top conflict that's causing you not to move forward, and neither of you are making money in this business, you need to address the top ones, that prioritize the top conflicts first and get those resolved, and then move down the list. So both that would then both of you agreeing on which ones are the top priority. Develop a plan to work on each conflict. So start, like we just mentioned, start with the most important conflict, focus on the future, and set up future meeting times to continue your discussion. So yes, finding time to meet, but not just that one time, because some conflicts may not be resolved straight away, or if they feel like they are, it'd be good to touch base just to check in on the other person or people to make sure that, are we still on track, are we still agreeing on the points that we set out that we want to agree on, and so on and so forth. Or do you need to meet to go through the other conflicts that are less prioritized on the list? So really keep continuing the listening, continuing the talking with each other in order to resolve any conflict that may be happening. So if once you've done your plan, it's all well and good making the plan, but follow through on your plan. So stick with the discussions until you've worked through each area of conflict, and maintain a collaborative, let's work out a solution attitude rather than just leave it. No, we need to work out a solution. How are we going to move forward? How are we going to resolve the issue that we're going through? How are we going to make this business the best it can be? How are we going to make our work days the best that they can be? Because you spend a huge majority at work, so you want it to be the best days that they possibly can be. So if you create a plan, follow through on that plan as best as you possibly can. And then build on your success. So look for opportunities to point out progress. So even though you may be in conflict with this other person, look out for opportunities where you can say, do you know what, you actually done really well there. Paying compliments and really pointing out where you've made progress in, from where you started from to where you are now. So, remember when we was arguing about such and such, or we had a conflict about such and such, or we didn't agree on X and Y, look where we are now. So really look out for opportunities to point out those progress. Compliment the other person's insight and achievements. So giving positive feedback always makes people feel good. So if there's an opportunity for you to do so, do it, because it not only giving people positive feedback not only makes the other person happy, but it also makes you happy knowing that you've done something good. Congratulate each other when you make progress. So even if it's just small steps, your hard work will pay off when scheduled discussions eventually give way to ongoing friendly communication. So it can come to a time where you don't need to schedule discussions. It's just a natural thing. You just have friendly discussions now. You want to sit down and meet with this other person. Oh, let's go out to lunch, or let's have take a tea break together, because you've got to that point now where you've resolved any conflict, that you can have a natural organic relationship, rather than it be, let's have a meeting in the diary to discuss our conflict. So building on your success is very important. So, there are like scenarios if you was in a group, and you can do this offline whilst you're watching us. A customer's giving you negative feedback on your website, and you realize that the person as they've left their contact details. So using a list on the previous slide, come up with a plan of action of how you would respond to that scenario. So Rachel, how would you respond to this scenario?
What would I do in that scenario? Well, I think the first thing I would do is I wouldn't rush into a response straight away. I'd really have to take time to read the feedback first, and digest and think, are there any actual kind of like relevant points in the feedback that I can actually take on board? Because I think it's important that when we get that kind of feedback, sometimes it can make us put our defences up straight away, but actually perhaps what they've said is something valid. Perhaps they've said that it took too long to receive their products, and maybe it did. So that's the first thing I would do: take a step back, reflect on what they've said. If I thought that, I'd always go back anyway to say thank you. Thanks for your feedback. Whether I agreed, disagreed, thanks for the feedback. If there were things that I agreed with, I'd let them know. I'd let them know perhaps where I might remedy things next time. But if there were things that I didn't agree with and I thought were a little bit perhaps unfair, I'd definitely make a time to say, can I speak to you? When's a good time for us to speak? Try and kind of keep it light, like, it's only, if you've got 10 minutes in your schedule where we can kind of, I just want to talk about the feedback that you've left. Make sure that it's as you said, a convenient time for them. Definitely, as you said, kind of like focus on what's happened, not the personality of the other person. So, I wouldn't necessarily be like, well, when you came in, you were really rude to me. Forget about all of that. I would explain that, well, I feel that when you had written this part of your review, it made me feel, I was really surprised and shocked and taken back. I felt really surprised and shocked at that, because that wasn't my perception of the situation at all. So I'd really like to hear more from you about what that meant for you. Try to bring them in on the conversation rather than them think that it's just me talking at them. Definitely, as you said as well, really listen keenly and carefully to what they're saying. Sometimes, as you said, like, you're just so quick to, I want to respond, but sometimes you're not even letting them finish their sentence before you want to jump on a point that they've made. Avoid interrupting. I can find that quite difficult, especially when I'm kind of like on edge. Take notes, even for me as well. It's something that I find really helps. As someone's talking, I'll just let them know I'm going to be taking notes so that I don't forget any points that I want to make, and so that I can really clearly understand what you're saying. Once they've told me what their issue was, I definitely said, great advice. Let me just reflect back. Let me just repeat. If I've got this right, what I think you're saying is, and make sure that actually I've understood clearly what their gripes or their issues are, because there's nothing worse than you thinking you know what the other person is in conflict with you about, and you find out, oh, actually it wasn't that at all, it was something completely different. And then hopefully we get to a point where we pick out the main points of the bits where we disagreed, find out points where we're in agreement, and then I guess, have a bit of a back and forth. This is where the discussion comes in, isn't it? Well, actually, I agree. Actually, I disagree. Actually, it's this. No, it's not. It's black. No, it's white. But as I said, always keeping in mind the end goal. So the end goal for me, feedback on my business, is I want to improve. So it's not about me scoring points with the other person and me being right and them being wrong. Actually, what can I take out of this so that next time it's a better experience. If there are things, let them know. If there's things that I'm going to do differently because of, you know, the information that they've given me, or equally let them know that, well, actually, you know, I really appreciate you coming to me, but you know, I feel that I think I'm going to continue in this way because it works for me or it works for my other customers, or, you know, the other teammates, you know, don't have, you know, we get on well with this. However, for you, maybe next time, what I can do is, you
Yeah.
know, and as long as it's not something that is going making me kind of go out of my way or too stressful for me, I can make adaptations. You know, I can make little changes here and there, not a problem, and it's fine. um yeah, and I guess that would be it, I think.
No,
Did I
definitely.
pass?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add to that. That was great. Thank you for your thank you for your response. I hope that resonated with other people that are watching as well. I think it would do.
I hope
And you
so.
covered a lot of what I spoke about on the previous slide and how to do
Mm.
it. So yeah, thank you. So now we're going to be going on to the next section, which is taking time off. So I'll hand that over
Oh,
to you, Rachel.
yes, you can take some time off now. Angela, I go on to here. How do we take time off? Now, this is, you know, whether you're employed, or self-employed and you're running your own business, it can always feel like you're somehow letting the side down, letting yourself down, letting the team down because you want to take some time off. However, I think we can all appreciate that it's actually really, really important that you give yourself that space. Have a break, have a Kit Kat, have a break, have a coffee, whatever you need to. It needs to be for you to feel as though actually I can take some of this pressure off right now, because that's what it's about. Um, so for me, I think what I would definitely say is have scheduled breaks, reasonable scheduled breaks. You know, don't work for kind of like 10 months without any time off whatsoever. And that's whether you're, I said, employed, self-employed. Schedule it in your diary, even if it's literally just half an hour. You know, every week you take half an hour on a Friday. I don't know, maybe you leave early, if you work for yourself, you leave early on a Friday, or you turn your emails off early on a Friday. With If you're employed, you've got annual leave. We're given annual leave for a reason, and I know it can be hard sometimes, especially when, you know, you might have deadlines coming up, you've got particular projects that need to be done, pieces of work that have to be completed, but actually yeah, you are entitled to your time off. So definitely schedule those breaks in. Utilize your downtime. So when you've taken that time off, try not to use it to run around here, to go to the bank, pick up your dry cleaning. You've got to do this. I'm going to go and see my mum. I'm going to go, you know, try to use it for your self-care time, for your downtime, for your recharge time. Because, you know, we've all been guilty of, oh, I've got an afternoon off, I can do like 50, 11 things now in this one afternoon, and then you don't even get through all of that to-do list, and you've got to carry things over. So yeah, definitely, I mean, you can, if you're going to take time off to do specific tasks, let that be your time off to do specific tasks, but don't take time off to recharge and sit back and relax and then fill your day with all of kind of like your chores and admin, all that you've got to do. Um, for those, especially us entrepreneurs, build a time off fund if you can. So
Mm,
each time you're paid, each time you get a contract, new client, you've got some income coming in, reserve a bit of that and put that into a time off fund. So that, you know, because sometimes you've got time off or you've got some downtime and you're like, oh, you don't want to feel as though you're taking money out of the business, or you're spending money that to, I don't know, go and have a I don't know, pampering afternoon or whatever, and you're like, oh, should I really be spending this? No, actually, you've accounted for it, and it's in your time off fund. Um, and lastly, what I'd say is definitely let clients and your customers and staff members know. Actually, you know, I actually work with someone who's so great on their email, where it actually says, you know, I answer emails between this time and this time. I take calls between this time and this time. Don't email me after like 1 o'clock on a Friday because I'm likely not to answer. If you email me on the weekend, you're going to wait until Monday. Let clients and customers know what your terms of reference and your ways of working are. And if you are going on a break as well, like, if you are going to I'm taking annual leave or I'm taking some time out, let them know in advance so they can be prepared. And if there are any pieces of work or any issues that need to be dealt with before then, they can be done and you can take your time off blissfully, not worrying, because sometimes we do that as well. We take time off, we're supposedly on annual leave, but we're still worrying if this email's been sent, or we're worrying has that presentation been written yet, and when I come back I'm going to have to do all of it. No, let's cut that out and let's just take time off in as much as possible in a zen state of calm, knowing that we've done all that we can beforehand.
Definitely. Yeah, and I actually schedule it in my diary, in my calendar
You
for
have
time
to.
out. Yeah,
You definitely have to.
right. But I like the point where you said about making a time off fund. I think I need to do that one as well. That's a good idea.
And the thing is, it doesn't have to be much. It
Mm,
could be just that you go and get whatever, I don't know, you spend an afternoon in a coffee shop somewhere, or you treat yourself to a picnic in the park now that the weather's gone nice. It doesn't have to be anything lavish. It's just
mm,
time away, and your mind is not necessarily on the pressure of work.
definitely. Thank you for that. Well, on that note, that literally brought us in nicely on the things that you can do on how to manage your mental health. And taking time out is definitely something that we could do to manage your mental health, and just your health in general. So what I'm going to, so this is part 2 of this section now. So what we're going to be discussing now are different ways that you could, as I mentioned, to manage your mental health. And one of those ways is the well-being, and the wheel of well-being, sorry. And the wheel of well-being can also be known as the 5 ways to well-being, but the wheel of well-being encompasses, so you've got being active, so your mind, so keep learning, and spirit, so giving, people, connecting with others, place, so taking notice, and planet, taking care of the planet that we're part of. And I feel that these are vitally important things that we could be doing on a daily basis. So when it comes to being active, that could mean different things to different people. So it can mean getting up and doing some form of exercise, or some form of yoga, or going for a walk, or going for a bike ride. Whatever being active means for you, that's what you will do for yourself. Mind, so keep learning. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything about business. It could be learning to cook a new piece of food. It could be learning a new language. It could just be learning about your environment. That just keeps your mind ticking over, and in a positive frame as well. Spirit, so giving, so give. I do, when I talk about give, it doesn't always have to mean giving something that costs anything. Just walking past someone and saying good afternoon, good morning, hello, hi, just randomly. Or the best one for me is just giving someone a smile. What does it take to smile at somebody? And more likely than not, if you smile at a stranger, they are, hopefully, we're hoping that they would smile back. But either way, that you've given something, you've given that smile, you've done that, and that's made you feel good. So when you're giving, it not only makes the person receiving what you're giving happy, it also makes you happy too, because yeah, I know I gave someone something today, and it doesn't mean that it was, like I said, it doesn't have to be something expensive, doesn't have to be something that costs anything at all. Giving your time, volunteering, finding a local charity or social enterprise where nearby, and just giving your time to support them. That is giving. So there's many things that could come under the term giving. And people, so connecting with others. And again, that can be a whole host of things that you could connect with others by. So that could be connecting with others, like what we're doing now. We're connecting with you even though we're not seeing who's there, but we know people are watching, we know people are going to be watching this, so we're connecting. Connecting via network groups. Networking, that was part of the 10 ways of how to overcome imposter syndrome. Connecting with other people and being parts of different groups. There's different, like, you got Facebook groups, you got meetups, you got things that you can find on Eventbrite, or you can just meet people that of like-minded people that are doing things similar to you, or connecting with your neighbors. The list can go on and on and on. Taking notice. So for me, that would be like when I'm going on my walks. I do have my mobile with me because I'm logging my steps, and I'd like to take pictures of like pretty things around me. But by doing so, I'm taking notice of the things around me, and by not being on physically on my phone, like texting people or calling, I'm able to take notice. Because in the world that we're living in now, it's very fast pacing and we're always busy. But when do we find the time to just slow down and take notice of what's around us? Like for me, last year I took notice. Started going for walks. I was being active, and I noticed that there was a nice green area by where I lived, and I didn't know that before. So by being active and by me learning about where my own area, I was able to take notice of what was new, what wasn't new, but what was new to me. And then you've got care for the planet, just caring for the planet that you were living in, when it comes to things like recycling and, upcycling, and just really just taking care of what you're doing within the planet. So on that note, what I've come up with, or not what I've come up with, there is, as I mentioned, so the Wheel of Wellbeing can also be taken in as the 5 ways to wellbeing. And these can actually, if you type in 5 ways to wellbeing, this can be found online. And what I generally give out to people that I work with is this sheet, and you can make this sheet up yourself. It's literally as you see it on the screen here. And all that goes through is, what things can you do to connect? What things can you do to take notice, give, be active, and keep learning? So you write down what it is that you can do, and what it is that you would like to do. And then I'll then go as far as to say, to challenge yourself. When will you do these things? So it's all well and good saying what you can do, but actually taking action. So when will you do this? And then the last column, as you can see there, did you actually achieve it? And this could be done on a daily basis or weekly basis, or however you see fit. But these are good ways to keep, to manage your mental health and just to manage your health in general. So please do take note of this, and search for this on online as well, and challenge yourself to the 5 ways to well-being, and tag us and let us know how you got on with it. So that's the 5 ways to well-being. Next, we're going to be going on to, what are emotions? So many of us go through different emotions on each day. So this image here, you've got 6 different emotions here, and as it says here, name a time in your business when you've experienced any of these emotions. Now, I don't know about you, but I can mention in one day when I felt these emotions. Rachel, I can hear you chuckling. Yeah. Do you want to let us know?
Well, no, it's just like you're saying, you can go through a whole range of emotions in one day, 1 hour, one work meeting. Like, it could be, happiness is like we've spoken about it. Getting feedback, for me, getting feedback from my clients, from young people that I work with, at how, happy they are and great that they feel, the successes that they've perhaps got through working with me on particular pieces of work. For me, that brings me happiness. Sadness is when I know that I perhaps haven't lived up to my own expectations, or level of service of work that I know that I can produce. Start feeling a bit sorry for myself. Then you get to the fearful that, oh my gosh, no one's ever going to want to work with me again because I didn't do this. Not that the other person or the other party has any idea or any clue about what you haven't done that you feel you should have done. Kind of disgust. When do I feel disgust in my in my business? Oh, when people don't clean the teaspoons properly in the office, that makes me feel disgusted. And probably a bit angry as well.
Yeah.
Surprise is when have I been surprised recently? Someone said that they could get me some funding, just literally out of the blue like that. With what, and I was like, wow, really? Yeah, we're talking to this person and that person, and we feel that this is a good fit. What you're doing is a good fit here. So a pleasant surprise, because there are other surprises, but it was definitely a pleasant surprise.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. So, as mentioned, these could be, 1 minute to the next, and it's good to be aware of your emotions, and we're going to go through that shortly. But if you are feeling these type of emotions, there is a scale. So there are different points on the scale. So you've got it ranges from being like fearful, depressed, and being feeling like a victim, to at the top of the scale, feeling joy and feeling empowered, feeling free, feeling loved and appreciated. And what this scale basically is saying here is that if you can move up the scale even by 1 point, so if you can go from feeling fearful to even feeling like jealousy, for example, even though we make jealousy is quite low on the list, but you're still moving towards the number 1 point. So you can go from feeling fearful to, for example, at the top of the downward spiral is feeling boredom. And then you can go from feeling bored to feeling enthusiastic. So as long as you're moving up and that number is actually reducing, then you're moving up the emotional scale. So even though you may still move from fear to jealousy, you're still in the red zone, but you're making your way up to the brown zone and then into the green, and so on and so forth. So knowing your emotions and finding ways, so maybe even going back to the 5 ways to well-being, finding ways to support you to move up that scale, that could then get you to the point where you feel happy within yourself, and you feel content, and you feel enthusiastic, and you feel passionate again, and you feel joy. But give yourself some time, because it depends on why you're having these emotions. So and have an understanding. So again, referring back to some of the things that we mentioned in the previous segment, keeping a journal is a good way to identify what are some of the things. Why am I having these emotions? When do I feel happy? When I'm happy, what's actually happening with me? So what am I doing while I'm feeling happy, and what am I doing when I'm feeling a bit lower down on the scale? So keeping a journal is a good way to support you in remembering and identifying, where you are, what you're doing at any given point on that emotional scale. And so, as I mentioned, going back to the 5 ways to well-being, to supporting you to manage your emotions. So on that note, we're going to go through emotional resilience, and I'm going to pass you over to Rachel.
Yes, so emotional resilience. I love the spirals, and I love the way you say, Andrew, that actually, even if you doesn't matter what your next kind of emotion is that you're feeling, but as long as it's moving up the scale, that is all progressive. And pretty much that's what this resilience is about. So I know we've again all got different kind of words and ideas and things that what resilience means to us, but a meaning that I really love. It says it's the collection of skills, characteristics, habits, and outlooks that make it possible to remain maximally flexible and fresh in the face of stress. So it doesn't mean necessarily that, hey, everything's great and rosy again and yay, stress doesn't exist. That's not what it's saying. Actually, the word resilience, just a fun fact for everybody out there, it actually comes from the Latin word meaning resilio, and that means leap or jump forward. or bounce back. So kind of like a bit like you're on the kind of like spiral of emotions. It's about how we move forward. It's about how do we bounce back from feeling one thing to feeling something else. I think it's important to know that it's not a passive feeling. So being resilient doesn't just happen because I'm feel resilient today. It's actually, you've generally got to do something. So I kind of see it as a verb. It's an action. It's a doing word. You've got to do something to be resilient. It's more than just about coping with stress or getting through a crisis. And talking about crisis, it's just as much about how we deal with the small things, like the day-to-day things that kind of might kind of come at us. How do we deal with those small disappointments and losses as much as we do with the kind of like the major crises? How do we adapt to the situations and surroundings around us and use them to our advantage? So a lot of the time we hear about what's the saying? When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Obviously, me being me, I've just completely changed it. And I'm like, you know what? When life hands you sour grapes, make champagne. It's like, just how do I take what's been thrown at me and be able to kind of turn that to my advantage and bounce back? So we've got the 5 pillars. So building emotional resilience with those 5 pillars. So for example, you've got self-awareness. So these all overlap. So it's not just a case of, I'm just going to be self-aware and then that's going to make me resilient. It might add to your resilience, but actually for optimal resilience, we need to know these 5, and we need to be practicing these 5 areas. And what it means is that when things are thrown at us, when life perhaps just hand us those challenges and crises, how are we able to rise above it or turn the situation around? So self-awareness, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's about knowing yourself. So I love what you're talking about with the journal, Andrea. I've got one of my great friends and colleagues who she's actually written her own journal, and she is a journal advocate. She's written her own journal, published her own journal, and she's always telling me, you know what, if you'd have written that in your journal, you'd be able to see the patterns and you'd be able to know, what was perhaps going to come next. So it helps you to understand, helps you to be know what your stressors and motivators are. You can kind of look back and see, well, actually there's a pattern of behavior here. When this happened, I felt like that, and when I felt like that, I started to behave like this. What are your skills? What are your weaknesses? What areas do you need help and support in? Where really importantly, what are the areas in that you really shine? What are the areas where you excel? What are the areas where you feel completely and utterly 100%, yep, I've got this, you feel in control? The more that we can be aware of ourselves in that instance will definitely help us with resilience. Your purpose, what drives you in life? What are your motivations? What's your mindset? What's your whole attitude towards life? I truly believe you can find a purpose in almost anything. My purpose, it could be to make sure I could be a road sweeper. It really doesn't really matter. But you know what? I really like making my environment look nice. I really like making my environment free of litter and nice for other people to enjoy. So do you know what? I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. That's my purpose in life, and that's what I'm going to lead with. And again, if you kind of build up your self-awareness, you're able to kind of define your purpose and the points in life that really get you going. Mindfulness, you kind of touched on this as well, Andrew, you're talking about going for walks and just really being in the moment and being present of where you are and hearing, like, right now I'm here, I can hear a dog barking. I've got my window open, and I'm just being mindful of all of the things that are creating this moment right now for me. Has been actively in the moment. It doesn't mean you have to force anything, but being aware of what's happening, what's your environment, perhaps what are other people doing right now. And again, it's been without judgment. It's just objectively noting it. um what are you currently experiencing? How do you feel right now emotionally? How do you feel right now? And again, not placing a judgment on it, like, oh, I feel sad and I shouldn't feel sad and I should be feeling like this. Actually, it's just an acknowledgement. Right now I feel sad, or right now I feel really happy, I'm elated. Being mindful of how you're feeling. Relationships is, I love how these all overlaps as well. How do we connect? Spoke about that in the ways, 5 ways of well-being. How do we connect with those around us? How do we support them? How do we interact with those people around us in the most positive way possible? And of course, lastly, self-care. How do we look after ourselves? How do we recognize the harmful, or perhaps areas of deficit or imbalance that we have in our lives? We need to find a way to be able to meet our own needs that keep us healthy and happy. So, what if we can kind of take a bit from self-care, a bit from self-awareness, a bit from purpose, a bit from mindfulness, a bit from relationships, put that all together? That is a way of living your life that helps you to be resilient. So do you know what? When something happens, guess what? I'm aware of it. I know it's not a surprise to me. I kind of knew that this was perhaps might be coming, but I've got great relationships with somebody in the office, so perhaps I can speak to them about it. Importantly, some question to ask. So off the back of that, are you aware of your triggers? Do you know the things that are actually going to perhaps give you a bit of a wobble, or throw you off course for a bit, throw you off balance for a bit? What do you do to recover from a challenging day? So again, that can kind of come into the self-care. It might be how you connect with others. It might be taking time out and being mindful on a walk. How do you take off all of that pressure and all of that challenge and just be you in that moment? Do you know how to manage your triggers? Do you know that when you get that, I don't know, you're in a room full of kind of people, and you get that imposter syndrome, that imposter that kind of comes up on your shoulder and says you shouldn't be here? How do you manage that in that moment? What is it that you're kind of going to say to yourself, or what are you going to do? What's the pep talk that you need to give yourself in order to manage that?
Definitely, thank you. So then, again, leading on nicely, how do you manage that? So we're going to go through now through some coping strategies. So some of the coping strategies for all what Rachel has just mentioned could be possibly as follows. So conquering your thoughts. So really, some of us can go through days where we're having that imposter syndrome thoughts. So if we can find ways to conquer them, if we can find ways to overcome them, like that could possibly be the checklist, the positive feedback checklist that we do for ourselves. They can help us to conquer the negative thoughts that we're having. Avoiding negativity. So when you're connecting with people, like on the 5 ways to well-being, connect with people that are going to bring positivity to your life, and reduce the negativity that's coming your way. Staying positive yourself. So rather than, oh, I can't do this, or this was going to be, I'm going to try, and really being positive about your day. Waking up, being grateful for at the start of the day. That generally, for me personally, starts my day off, and in a positive manner. Dropping resentment. There could be many things that you could be resentful for. So that could be going back to the conflict situation. You could resent that person that you're having conflict with, or resent a situation. But if you can, we spoke about how to deal with conflict. If you can deal with that conflict and be able to drop that resentment, that will really help you to cope with things in a better way. Nature therapy. This mental health awareness week month was about nature, being out in nature. And I just love being out in nature. And as I mentioned, part of my being active is going for walks, and that those walks do entail me going out for walks in nature. And it really just helps you just to breathe it all, take it all in, and just be at peace with yourself. So, and just hearing the birds and hearing nature just making their own organic noises. Releasing control, especially with being, if you're self-employed, we want to be in control of everything that's going on. if possible, try and release some of that control, and ask for help as and when required, and as and when you can. Even if it's someone, can you just help? I haven't got the funds at the moment to pay for you to help me, but can you help in giving your time? So releasing control and focus, and quiet in your mind. So really focusing, and finding time to quiet your mind. That could be via meditation. That could be when you're going through the nature therapy, or being active and going on your walks. But really finding that time to just be quiet. I generally like to. I do the thing where each day, at least 15 minutes out of my day. So at set points of the day, I just down tools and just quiet my mind, and just focus on myself, focus inwards, rather than what's going on the outside. So I think that's really helped me to cope with a lot of the everyday things that are going on that you have to get done, but you need time. You do need time for
You
yourself.
need time, yeah.
And that leads us on nicely to discuss, like, how would we like to manage no. So Rachel, over to
Yes.
you. How can we
How
manage
do
no?
we say no? I mean, the first thing that I ever heard that really resonated with me about no was like, actually, no full stop is a complete sentence. Like, no, that's it.
Yeah.
Sentence done, finished. um, but I think some of it can be, it's seen as it can be seen as a negative. It has been seen as a negative way of communicating, and it doesn't have to be. So we're going to look at how to be happy if you hear no, how to be happy, and when should you say no, and how do you say no positively, because it doesn't have to be a negative, as we said. Happy hearing no. Are you happy hearing no when you're extremely busy, but you still take on one more client, or you agree to, yeah, okay, I'll go to that meeting, it's fine, yeah, you can put me in, so and so's not is on annual leave, so I'll step in for them. And then you get that call that says, oh, the meeting's been cancelled. Or the client says, actually, I don't have the funds to do that piece of work anymore. So, and that can be whew, I'm happy to hear no at that point. Because it kind of fits in more with your agenda. When to say no, I love this little cartoon. I could never be this person. I mean, I have been this person, but not when it comes to food. Like, I could just not be this person. So you're going out to lunch. Oh, we're thinking of burritos for lunch. And she's saying, oh, I love burritos. And then her colleague says, oh, great. And then you're eating burritos. And she's like, I hate burritos. Why? Well, let's just say I don't really like burritos. Could I have something else? Or what else do they do in the burritos restaurant? What's it? Burritos restaurant? Is there such a thing? But anyway, what else do they do in the in the Mexican restaurant? Maybe that I can have to eat. But I have been in the situation where somebody has asked me to do something, and it's not something that I've wanted. I didn't have time, but I've said yes because I didn't want to feel like I was letting somebody down. I didn't want to be the odd one out. Everybody else is doing it, so maybe I should just go along with it. But you do learn. I'm the one that's sitting there, be like, oh, why did I decide to come here tonight? I've got so much work to do. I just should be at home, but I'm here. So yes, when saying, and how do you say no politely? So you've just started your new business. You've got a full diary, which is great if you've just started your business and you've got a full diary. Well done. Kudos to you. You have a last minute request. You don't want to say no because it's real. You're afraid that you're going to lose that customer or that new client. You're new. You want to build up to have a good relationship. You want them to refer you on to other people. How do you say no politely? For me, well, Andrea, you go first. How would you say no politely in this instance?
Not at this present moment, not right now. Could you, if you sign up, and then when my list opens again, then you could be the first to be notified when I'm able to do it. At that point, it's not a no, it's just not right now.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and especially if my diary's full. I need to take care of myself. And yes, I want more people, but if we have a list, a wait list, if you put your name on the wait list, as soon as space comes available, then I can slot you in. That's my
Exactly.
polite
That's your no. And adding on to that again, it's just what you said. Like, I can't do what you've asked, but what I can do is, I'm really sorry. I can't take all of that on at the minute. Or even what I can do is, I've got an associate that I work with, or I can make a referral. Oh, do you know what? I can't do all of that. I can't do all of your social media campaign for you right now, but I can source some images for you. That might help. So I'll kind of always like to say what I can do, as opposed to just what I'm not going to do. And 9 times out of 10, people are actually really grateful and happy. They'd be more happy that you say no now than take on the work and can't complete and can't deliver, because that's going to absolutely destroy their expectations, what they had of you, and you're going to feel even worse. And you'll be like, oh, why didn't I just say no why did I take this on? So we want to kind of avoid that also. So there is a framework, a DOC framework. So the next time you're presented with a brand new, shiny opportunity, time-consuming request, you can use this framework to assess whether it's really worth your time. So D is distraction from day to day. Ask yourself if me taking on this work or completing this request is going to complement what I'm doing, or completely be a distraction and detour from what you're doing. Objective. So ask yourself, can this new request fit into something that I'm already doing? So, for example, somebody might ask me to, can you run a wellbeing session for me? And I'll be like, oh, actually, I've written one. I've done with Andrea. Andrea, are you free on this date? Can we go and do this? It might be worth taking it on if it's a potential distraction, but it doesn't fit with any of your objectives at all. It's best to say no. And C, consider the upside. Ask yourself, what benefit am I going to get from this? Will I learn something new? Is it going to connect me with new clients? Something that non-financially, non-money related as well, because sometimes we can be seduced by the fact that someone's going to pay an invoice, and actually when you weigh that up with your well-being, is it actually worth it? Is there value in it? If there's no upside for it for you, if you can't actually see how this is going to be of any benefit to you, just say no.
Yeah, thank you. And I know that could be hard for some of us, but I think in the long run, it really does help our well-being by saying no. Yeah, thank you. So moving on.
Easier with time.
Say again?
It becomes easier over time. The more you say it, the more you practice, the easier it becomes.
Definitely. A bit like physical activity and exercise. It becomes it does become easier over time, and the more that you do it, the more that you will see the benefits, see and feel the benefits from it. This is one that's very, very close to my heart. Physical activity and exercise research, and I could say I'm actually been part of that research. So research has shown that physical activity does not only improve your physical health and physique, it improves your mental health by having a positive impact on depression and anxiety. It also relieves stress, improves memory, helps you sleep, and gives you a better, helps you sleep better and boosts your overall mood. Now, just as I mentioned earlier, I was diagnosed with a mental health illness, used physical activity to manage my overall health. And I can be testimony to the fact of all of these things that we're talking about, what research is saying. It also says that exercise is a powerful depression fighter for several reasons. It releases endorphins, which is a powerful chemical in your brain that gives you that feel-good feeling. It also stimulates the release of dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. Exercise can also serve as a distraction, allowing you to find some quiet time to take out of your busy schedule. So for me personally, I could have a busy day and there could be a point in the day where I've got a break. I do like to go for a walk, because one, it's part of me being active. Two, it's really helping me to just distract away from being at my desk, literally. So, how can physical activity help your mental health? As I mentioned already, so just recapping, better sleep, happier moods. I'm, my son can tell you that. Managing stress and anxiety or intrusive and racing thoughts, better self-esteem. So you feel better about yourself. You're no longer slouching. You sit with a you're straight back and you're really confident. Reducing the risk of depression. So if you haven't got to the hopefully you haven't got to the stage of depression and anxiety, but by exercising and physical activity it can support the reducing of the risk of depression, and it also connects you with other people. So if you're going to the gym or going swimming or even going for walks, it connects you with other people, which is always a good thing. Then we've got self-care, which is very, very important. So self-care is so we've got here. Let's have a group discussion. So let's discuss this, Rachel. What does
Let's go with
self-care
it.
look like to you?
To me, oh my gosh, so self care is taking that time to do the things that I enjoy without having to report to anybody about it, without feeling guilty about it, without having to kind of justify why I've done it. It's just my time to do with what I need to do. And I love this little graphic where it says it's okay to celebrate the small wins. It's okay to celebrate every win, no matter how small. And to me, taking 2 hours off to go and get my nails done, I celebrate that because I've actually had to navigate that time through everything that I'm doing, and I've managed to do it. That's a win for me, and it's self care. So yeah, for me, that's self care.
Definitely. And for me, this time last week, I was actually out with friends at South Bank, and it was nice. It was just nice to just down tools and not have to think about work and meeting up with my friends. So that's connecting. We was being very active because we did a lot of walking as well. We had nice food. So that for me is taking care of myself because with work, with having a family as well, we tend to prioritize other things and other people over ourselves. So
Yeah.
self-care, prioritizing yourself, and as it says there, celebrating the small wins. But the definition of self-care is the practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own health. So like what we've both mentioned, taking action. Like I took action to meet up with my friends. We took action to go for walks and have nice food. So that brought me happiness. And in particular, like it says here, the practice of taking an active role in protecting one's well-being and happiness, in particular during periods of stress. And the last few weeks have been kind of stressful. So for me to actually do that, that did bring me a lot of happiness. So that was a big part of self-care for me. And self-care doesn't always have to mean spending lots of money as well. You know, like I said, just meeting up with friends and going for walks could just be great enough just as it is.
Mm.
So how do we be kind to ourselves? So over to you, Rachel, to let us know how to be
Being
kind to ourselves.
kind, yeah, being kind to yourself. So, self care is a way of being kind to yourself. But just before we close, really important, be kind to yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. So, we've got here, write down three things. This is your homework if you like that kind of thing. Just write down three things that you can do to be kind to yourself. Um, for me, being kind to myself is going to bed early on
Mm,
time. For me, being kind to myself is understanding that I am going to make mistakes sometime, and not to kind of you know beat myself over the head about that, but to learn from it and do something different next time.
mhm,
Um, what are the signs that you're being kind to yourself? I feel, how do you feel about yourself? And sometimes, you do have to have a conversation with yourself, as crazy as that sounds, um, where oh, was I a bit harsh then? Should I have thought that? The thoughts that you have, is how do you be kind to yourself? Imagine you are your friend. You are
mm,
your friend. Would you say this to a friend of yours? Would you say this to your son or your daughter or your partner? Would you act that way to somebody else. Um, the benefits of being kind to yourself are the fact that I love this little graphic where it says self-love is the goal, everything else is extra. It's kind of feel like, the benefit of being kind to yourself, you feel confident, you feel secure, you feel kind of your self-esteem is boosted. I love what you said, that you sit with a straight back, you walk completely different when you feel as though you're being kind to yourself. You carry yourself differently. People notice that something's different about you. So yeah, be kind. And I think there was a hashtag kind of like last year about being kind to us. Be kind to others. We really need to extend that to be kind to ourselves also.
Definitely, I think it's a big thing, especially when you're working by yourself and don't necessarily have the other people to talk to all the time. You do talk harshly. You may talk harshly to yourself. So yeah, so be kind and talk to yourself as Rachel said, as you would a personal friend. And so that is literally, we've come to the end of our workshop, the Wellbeing at Work workshop, and just gonna. Have had a Rachel.
Yeah, I said, yeah, we have. It's the end. Can't believe it. It's gone very quickly.
It has. And just in case you may need these, or for yourself, or for anybody that you may know, here are some websites and numbers for a few external agencies that could support you with your mental health. So you've got Anxiety UK, NHS Traces, and the Samaritans. Excuse me. You've also got with the World Health Organization, COVID-19 facts, and various other, say, NHS as well. So please take notes of these. Take a screenshot of these URLs. And if you've got any feedback, all feedback is welcomed. That could be found on that address. And Rachel, do you want to talk about yourself as you're here?
About myself at the end. Okay, yes. So very, very quickly, because that's one of my pain points, is I don't particularly like talking about myself. But yes, wife and mother, my children. Oh, this has changed now. So from 5 to 19. So they obviously wrote this last year. I'm learning to love life and be kind to myself. Cherish all the happy moments. I love helping others. I love supporting others to reach their goals. And I use that as kind of like my motivator. So when I've managed to help somebody else get somewhere, that's me. That makes me happy and makes me want to continue on. So mental health is a kind of like a passion of mine. Currently, I've just been funded to run some mental health. Well, I say well-being, should I say, well-being networking events for entrepreneurs, as well as creating a mental health and well-being charter for co-working spaces in southwest London. So my business, Black Maven, you can find out more about me on www.blackmaven.co.uk.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rachel. Linda was also another person who co-founded this workshop, who's obviously not here today. And then you have myself. I'm Andrea. I'm a mother to one. My one, I call him son. That's spelled correctly. Yeah, he brightens up my life. And my true calling is to educate and empower others. I'm an experienced in secondary school teacher. As I mentioned before, diagnosed in 2015 with clinical depression and anxiety. And that led me to then become the founder and director of an organization called Focus CIC, which serves young people and primarily Black and brown young women and girls, to educate them about the benefits and importance of physical and mental health. And I can be contacted at contact@andreacorbett.com, and on all social medias I'm Andrea Corbett, so it's quite easy to find me. And what else is left to say apart from thank you for joining us? Rachel, do you have any last
yeah. All I was about to say is make sure you stay tuned for the rest of the workshops which are coming up today. So we've got workshops around finance, workshops around business planning, and social media.
Excellent. And to also remind you that these workshops are CPD accredited, and the links for the forms to gain your accreditation can be found on the at the YouTube link, I believe. Yeah. So go over to there if you're not watching from there. Then, or if not, if you can't find it there, do contact school at mcmsaatchi.com, and they can give you the relevant information that you need. But once again, thank you for joining us, and have a great day. And don't forget to continue watching the rest of the workshops.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.